Some of us grew up reading the Harry Potter books, some of us grew up reading the Percy Jackson books, and some of us are mentally ill. Hi, I'm Bree. I've been addicted to the Shadowhunter books since 2011. A couple times in my life, I've stopped thinking about this series, and then I see a meme or some fan art, and the obsession is awoken again like some ancient beast. You can take the girl out of the hyperfixation, but you can't take the hyperfixation out of the girl. Cassandra Clare. It has been 13 goddamn years. Release me from your clutches. Please, Cassandra, I'll do anything. To quickly address three things. One, yes, my walls are green now. Two, yes, I'm cosplaying Isabel Lightwood. Three, yes, I have a microphone. I don't like the audio in my other videos. This is a shitty microphone, but it'll have to do. So, welcome to the Dummy's Guide to the Shadowhunter Chronicles. Welcome to Crash Course. I'm Hank Green. No. If you clicked on this, you've probably at least heard of the Shadowhunter books, and if you've heard of the Shadowhunter books, then at the very least you know that there's a lot of them. And it gets really confusing really fast with all the different trilogies and spin-offs and novella collections, and it's like, do you read a chronological order, publication order? Do you have to read all of them? Can you skip the spin-offs? What is Jace's last name? And then you see those like 2-minute TikToks where they're like, it's really easy. I'll explain the entire order to you. All you have to do is read this, bam, bam, bam. We're not doing that. We're going to make this nice and easy, okay? We're going to put up pictures so then you can help remember each trilogy and you understand the vibes for each one. I'm going to refer to them by easy names so you won't get mixed up. Don't worry, babe. Crack open a cold one. We're going to have some fun, okay? Because as we all know, if there's anything I love more than reading the Shadowhunter books, it's talking about them, much to the detriment of my friends and family. And oh boy, do I love talking. So, what is the Shadowhunter Chronicles? It's a young adult urban fantasy series that first came out in 2007 about half human, half angel warriors called the Shadowhunters, who fight demons for a living to protect humans and the rest of the world. And like I mentioned, it's urban fantasy, so it's not some like other universe. It's our world, but with fantasy beings added in. So you got humans, demons, angels, half human, half angels, aka the Shadowhunters. And then there's Downworlders, which are all of the other fantasy beings, but they also have like a little bit of demon blood that makes them fantasy beings. Pretty much all of the like classic big fantasy creatures you could think of are in this universe, but there's four main ones: vampires, werewolves, warlocks, and fairies. Yes, I'm basically just redoing my little intro for the Clockwork Angel video. Just get over it. And the humans don't know about the Shadowhunters or demons or any of the fantasy people. Okay, so that's the general gist of the universe that we're in. And then in the universe, there's going to be 5 main series. 4 of which have already been published. And each one of these series has a different time period, different set of characters, different city that they take place in. But some of the characters pop up in like more than one series. Like sometimes there's a little bit of overlap. You get to see the characters interact with other characters when they're older. And there's plenty of different Easter eggs hinting about things that happen in other series and such. And so it just makes the Shadowhunter books like really fun to reread because you pick up on all these things that you didn't the first time. And there's like a lot of world building in this universe, like so much world building that the author Cassandra Clare literally wrote the in-universe encyclopedia explaining all of the lore. It's called the Shadowhunters Codex. You can buy it. You can read it. It also has like fun little annotations that are like supposed to be made by one of the characters, like if they're reading it for like school, which is really fun. But yes, that's one thing that I really like is that the Shadowhunter books have like this really cool magic system where the Shadowhunters, who again are half human, half angel, have these things called steles or steles. I don't fucking know how to pronounce it, okay? I've listened to audiobooks. Different people have pronounced it different ways. The author pronounces it a different way. I don't know how to pronounce it. I'm saying steles. Like a fucking idiot. But yes, the Shadowhunters have special like angelic weapons, and they have steles, which are like these tools that they use to burn angelic runes into themselves. And drawing these angelic rune tattoo things onto themselves can help them have powers. Like they can draw a healing rune on themselves or a rune that makes them faster, things like that. And like I mentioned before, there's the Downworlders, aka vampires, werewolves, fairies, warlocks, all the fantasy people, and they all have their own politics and leaderships and stuff. But the Shadowhunters are like the ones protecting everyone from the demons. So they're kind of in charge and make the laws in the Shadow World, aka the fantasy world. And they're also like a little racist towards the Downworlders. Because to quote myself in my Clockwork Angel video, the Shadowhunters are like, ew, you guys have demon blood. We have angel blood. We're better than you. And they go over the politics of that. Yeah, the Shadowhunters as a whole are kind of like a little problematic, but like the main characters usually are going against the government because they're like, fuck the government, you guys are terrible people. It's really fun. But like if all of that just went in one ear and out the other, like don't even worry about it because the books are really easy to read. The author will take you through the lore bit by bit so you don't feel too confused. She like holds your hand, she'll remind you of the important stuff in case you forgot, especially in the older trilogies. Like she's really rehashing everything for you. But yes, the general vibes of the series is basically like if you took a group of teenagers who were trained to fight demons from a young age, but also like regularly make your mom jokes, and then they see that the government's doing a shit job at trying to save the world, and they're like, fuck y'all, we do what we want, and then they do it instead. It's just fun. Like that's like if I had to use one word to describe the Shadowhunter books, it would just be fun. There's a lot of romance, cute friendships, funny moments. And it is fantasy, but like some of the trilogies are a little bit more character focused than you would normally expect in a fantasy series, where it's more about the relationships between the characters and the character development than it is actually about defeating the bad guy. Don't get me wrong, like the ultimate goal is always to defeat the bad guy and save the world, but usually the thing that I care about more are the characters. So if that sounds like a nightmare to you, having a character driven fantasy book, maybe these books aren't for you. Like overall, I would say that Cassandra Clare's strong point is just making a really lovable cast of characters who you grow super attached to, and then making them absolutely miserable for no damn reason. Also, don't be going into the series expecting like adult fantasy. Like if A Song of Ice and Fire is usually your vibe, if you like serious grimdark fantasy or like you read classics, like maybe don't read these. You gotta appreciate a certain level of trashiness in your books to truly understand the genius that is the Shadowhunter books. And also, you gotta like a heavy dose of romance with your fantasy, because there's a lot of it. Everyone's in love with everyone, everyone's getting paired off with everyone. It gets super messy, and I love it. And the books can be really earnest in like an endearing way, but also they don't take themselves too seriously, which I love. Like you just got to be a fun person to read these books. I don't know how else to say it. You got to be someone who's okay with your books being like a little cheesy or bad sometimes. Like don't get me wrong, these books have their moments where they're like pretty great, but they're not like the Lord of the Rings, nor are they trying to be. The books know what they are, and so as long as you go into them with the right expectations, you'll have a good time. Don't worry about it. We're here for the good vibes, funny moments, cute romance, and drama, okay? But yes, there's like a reason why these books are so popular and so addicting, and why people keep coming back to them even after all these years, including me. Cassandra Clare, please free me from your clutches. Please. I'm begging you, please. I haven't seen my family in years. And that's because these books are just like entertaining as fuck, okay? All right, now I'm just going to briefly go over each trilogy just so then you know what I'm talking about when I say read this series first. I know what you're thinking. Oh my god, Bree. How can I read all of these books? You said there's like 20 books. There's so many of them. Fear not, is okay? It's 5 series. One of them hasn't even come out yet. That's basically 4 series. And each one's a trilogy, but it's basically just like one really long book. So it's basically 4 books. You just have to read 4 books. You can't handle reading 4 books? 4 really long books? Alrighty, so I'm going to go over the trilogies and I'm going to go over them in publication order. I'm going to make it really easy for you to remember them. I'm going to put pictures up. Pay attention. So first is the series that started it all, The Mortal Instruments. Anyways, this is a 6-book series, and this is the reason that I can't say there's 4 trilogies out right now, because there's not. There's 3 trilogies and 1 sextology. Anyways, a hexology. Never mind. All right. Like I said, this is the first series. It's the problematic older sister. It was originally going to be a trilogy, but then it got like super popular. And so Cassandra Clare wrote 3 more books. I'm finally putting my Pinterest boards to good use because this is the aesthetic of the Mortal Instruments. Just cool city at night vibes. Like fighting demons all night and then afterwards walking to your favorite diner where they serve blood for vampires and raw steak for werewolves and also like really good pancakes. It takes place in 2007 in New York City, following Clary Frey, just a totally normal teenage girl with no magical powers whatsoever. They just so happen to see some weird people with weird tattoos kill someone right in front of her, but no one else can see them for some weird reason, and whose apartment gets broken into and her mom kidnapped literally that same week, but like that's totally unrelated, don't worry about it. But yes, then we follow her as she learns about the Shadowhunters and teams up with them, especially this really hot Shadowhunter named Jace, to find her mom and defeat the big bad villain, Valentine. And I know that sounds like literally every YA fantasy series that's been published in the past 20 years and low-key boring, but I swear that the world building, characters, and humor makes the series so fun to read. So yeah, it's like the classic series, so all of the lore is explained to you, got the hero's journey, epic war, and it's got that, shall we say, controversial love story where a couple falls in love and then is promptly told that they are actually siblings and still high key, low key want to bang. And this is the reason that I can't recommend the Shadowhunter books to my friends. Cassandra, what were you thinking? You couldn't make their love forbidden for literally any other reason? You couldn't have Valentine be an abusive by using some other manipulation tactic? You had to turn to the ins. You're my sister, he said finally. My sister, my blood, my family. I should want to protect you. He laughed soundlessly, without any humor. To protect you from the I can't. To protect you from the sort of boys who want to do with you. Exactly. You said you just wanted to be my brother from now on. I lied, he said. Demons lie. I love this book. Anyways, despite that honestly minor hiccup, This is a very fun series to read. The characters are like really funny. There's a lot of funny jokes that I remember years later. There's this like one joke that's just ingrained in my head where the characters go to like their favorite fantasy diner and there's a couple of werewolves in the booth next to them and they're arguing about who would win in a fight, Dumbledore or Magnus Bane, who's like the High Warlock of Brooklyn. And the one werewolf's like, dude, obviously Dumbledore, like he's way more powerful than Magnus Bane. And the other werewolf's like, yeah, well, at least Magnus Bane is real. And it's just like dumb jokes like that that like really make me love the books. Also, having 6 books with the same cast of characters means we really get to build up on the character relationships between everyone, and it really allows us to build to this like epic conclusion. The characters have plenty of time to get into shenanigans. So you start off the series with these like annoying sarcastic teens who honestly have beef with each other and then slowly start to get close and become heroes who save the world, all while making sarcastic quips and making out with each other every other scene. Okay, and so I think the litmus test for whether you would vibe with the series is to ask yourself this question. In any given situation, is your highest priority, first and foremost, to commit to the bit? If so, then I think you'll with the series. You just gotta be like a little deranged and enjoy cracking jokes about up things to like the series. Cause like the incest is Winston's plotline in the second and third books is not for the weak. So are you up to the challenge? Are you ready to commit to the bit? You're my sister, he said finally. My sister, my blood, my family. I should want to protect you. But yes, these books have like immaculate vibes, okay? Writing in the first couple books isn't the best because it's the author's first books ever, but I'd be lying if I said that they weren't like legit funny, or at least I think they're funny. If you've watched like my other videos and thought that they were funny, then you'll probably think these books are funny because I just stole my sense of humor from these books. All right, so that was The Mortal Instruments, aka the New York books. New York. Got it? New York. So Cassandra Clare wrote The Mortal Instruments. She wrote them as the trilogy. She's like, they're done. Cool. Now I'm going to do a prequel trilogy. Everyone loves those. And her publisher was basically like, I mean, you could do a prequel trilogy, but no one likes those. Say, you should write more of those Mortal Instruments books. I mean, the kids just can't get enough of that incest. And she was like, okay, like, I do want to write more of those, but like, I also want to do a prequel trilogy that takes place in the Victorian era, and it'll be a steampunk retelling of A Tale of Two Cities. Doesn't that sound great? Her publishers were like, a steampunk retelling. I don't know why I'm doing that voice for her publishers. Her publishers were like, a steampunk retelling of A Tale of Two Cities. Historical fiction. Am I YA fantasy? And even though she was like a bestseller at the time, she had to like prove to her publishers that there is a market for like historical YA fantasy and like show other books that were popular. So she had to like sell them on this prequel trilogy, which is absolutely insane to me because what she ended up writing was The Infernal Devices, which is like her magnum opus. Okay, like this is the best Shadowhunter trilogy. In case you didn't know, that was my I think these are the best ones. Shocker. Like, yeah, I wouldn't have spent a year making videos on these books if I didn't think that they were really good. I think a lot of people agree that this is the best trilogy. Some people have other favorite trilogies, but like, I think this is the best one. So yes, The Infernal Devices is a trilogy that takes place in Victorian era London, 1878. It's got that like dark, grungy, steampunk aesthetic, like a little dark academia. It's got the love of my life, Will Herondale, in it. And it has like this really heart-wrenching, but like really good love story. So this trilogy follows Tessa Gray, just a totally normal human teenage girl with no magical powers whatsoever, who moved from New York to London to live with her brother. But then as soon as she gets off the boat, immediately gets kidnapped by a couple of evil warlocks. And then she gets saved by the London Shadowhunters and ends up living with them in the London Institute and helping them solve the mystery of who's behind all of these mysterious murders and evil robots and like what happened to her brother. And it's like a whole thing, but like we don't care about that. We care about the fact that she falls in love with the two hottest Shadowhunters. And like, yes, I know it's a love triangle and like everyone hates love triangles, but like anytime someone says fuck love triangles, they're always like, wait, I didn't mean you guys though. Not Harry and Greystairs. We don't mean you, Harry and Greystairs. Like it being a love triangle actually like enhances the story and like adds to the heartbreak. And it's just like really sad to see these 3 people who like love the other 2 more than they love themselves and like want to give up their own happiness. Like it's like don't get me started. Like you just want everyone to like end up happy and like you know it's not going to happen and you just have to pretend like you're fine, but you're not really fine. You just can't get into it because they would never understand. And it's like super messy and I love it. So yeah, the draw of this trilogy is for real the love story. And the cast of characters, of course. There's like a really cute cast of characters in this trilogy that grow to be really close with each other and care about each other like a family. And it really makes me emotional. Everything in this trilogy makes me emotional. This trilogy is just for the depressed girlies who are like absolutely miserable and just desperately need one win but can't get one and need someone to project all of their fears and miseries onto, aka one William Owen Herondale. And I cry knowing that he is a fictional man written by a woman and that no one is like this in real life. Except for me, because for some weird reason, I think I'm Will Herondale. But like, I'm also in love with Will Herondale. So like, I don't know what that says about me, except that I simultaneously think that I'm trash, but also have a God complex. Anyways, great trilogy. Still makes me cry like a bitch. Great to read during the holiday season. Like, the Mortal Instruments is like the fall season. The Infernal Devices is like winter. But yeah, this series has got everything: sad, pining, pretty boys, evil robots, demons, magical necklaces, racism, the threat of potential and why Cassandra? But for real, the Infernal Devices just has so much angst. If you want crazy tension between the two leads, like if you want slow burn pining for 3 books while they're both simultaneously miserable, read these books. Clockwork Prince is for like the depressed horny girls. There's just so much banter and tension between the main trio. Like they're just hair and Greystair supremacy, my god. So that was the Infernal Devices, aka the Victorian London books, okay? We got the New York 2007 books and the Victorian London books. Got it? Alrighty, so Cassandra Clare wrote the Mortal Instruments and then the Infernal Devices and the second half of the Mortal Instruments. So all of those came out and everyone was like, whoa, these are great. We want more. And she was like, more, you say? Be careful what you wish for. Guess what, bitches? I've got plans for 3 more trilogies. And half the people were like, oh my god, can you stop? And the other half of us were like, fuck yeah. I was in the second category. So the next trilogy that she published was The Dark Artifices. These books take place at the LA Institute. Quick side note, every city has its own institute, which is like the home base for the Shadowhunters. And they have like someone who runs the institute and also is in charge of like telling the Shadowhunters what missions to go on and stuff. And then like they report to the government for like that city and stuff. So like all of the books will like have the characters either living in or visiting the institutes around the world, so it's relevant. So she wrote a sequel trilogy called The Dark Artifices. These books follow main character Emma Carstairs and her best friend slash parabatai, we'll talk about that later, Julian Blackthorn, who is daddy in more ways than one, and the rest of the Blackthorn family. So it takes place in 2012 in Los Angeles. It's very summery, very beachy. It's like the summer trilogy. Like the LA Institute is like across the street from the beach. We're talking late night walks on the beach, exploring cliffs by the ocean, Santa Monica Pier, ocean demons. This trilogy also has more of a focus on fairies. All of the trilogies like focus on, the Shadowhunters, but then they also will have different downworlders that they're focusing on or different aspects of like the world. So like it doesn't feel too repetitive. Mortal Instruments has like a good mix of all the different kinds of downworlders, specifically, vampires, werewolves, warlocks, fairies. The Infernal Devices has like more of like the warlocks, and then the Dark Artifices have a lot more fairies in it. The main plot of this one is that the main characters, Emma Carstairs and Julian Blackthorn, are in love, and like they can't be in love because it's forbidden. And like, okay, that's literally the plot of like every single main couple in the Shadowhunter books, but they can't be in love because they're parabatai. Which, for if you don't know, it's like when you swear an oath to fight by each other's side for life, and like you would give up your own life for them, and like your partners in battle. It's basically like platonic soulmates who fight together. Heavy on the platonic because it is forbidden to be in love with your parabatai. But guess what? These bitches are. And it's 10 out of 10. I love a good forbidden romance. And they're like a power couple. Like they're childhood friends. It's good. Oh, and there's also this like whole noir mystery thing where like Emma's trying to figure out who murdered her parents. And there's like necromancy and it's like a whole thing, but who cares about that? Because oh my god, forbidden romance with my morally gray king Julian Blackthorn. He's a little problematic, but that's how I like him. Oh, and Emma, she's great. I really like Emma because she's like a super cool badass fighter, but she's also just like really unhinged and just like a bit of a dumbass, but like in like such an endearing way. She's like obsessed with trying to figure out who murdered her parents, and she has like a literal conspiracy theory board inside of her closet. And I really resonate with that because for a year I had a conspiracy theory board on my closet. But yeah, this trilogy also has like a lot more focus on like politics, which makes sense because it came out around the time of the 2016 election. So, yeah. Another really fun aspect of this trilogy is that it takes place 5 years after the Mortal Instruments, aka the New York books that take place in 2007. So the main characters were like 12 when the Dark War happened in the Mortal Instruments, and like they had to grow up with the aftermaths of that war and stuff. So you get to kind of see the like impacts of what happened in the Mortal Instruments. And the characters from the New York books are in their 20s at this point. Like they're off doing their own missions and stuff, but they'll like pop up and like end up helping like the LA characters and stuff, and they like team up and it's really fun. Okay, so that was the Dark Artifices, aka the Los Angeles books. So we got the New York books and the Los Angeles books that go together. And then we have the Victorian London books and the Edwardian London books. That's right. So the most recent trilogy that Cassandra Clare has published is The Last Hours. And these follow all the kids of the characters from the Infernal Devices, aka the Victorian London books. So this is the aesthetic of The Last Hours. We know all the seasons for the other books, and The Last Hours is 100% spring. It's 1903, turn of the century, very early Edwardian. Think like a little bit before Mary Poppins and the Titanic. It's got good vibes. Think picnics in the park with your friends, walks in the garden, gorgeous balls, mysterious greenhouses with demonic plants, creepy houses where a character slowly went mad and forced her children to live a life of isolation, waiting for the day that she can enact her revenge, ghosts, necromancy, princes of hell, zombie towns, really fun stuff. Cassandra Clare really likes to base her stories and take inspiration from classic literature. So the New York books is Paradise Lost. The Victorian London books are A Tale of Two Cities. The Los Angeles books reference several short stories and poems, but especially Annabel Lee by Edgar Allan Poe. And The Last Hours is based on Great Expectations, because as we all know, Cassandra Clare loves her Dickens. So I can't say the main characters' full names without spoiling things, because reminder, these are the children of the Victorian London book characters. But it follows main character Cordelia, who moves to London with her family after her father was wrongly arrested for something, and she's trying to help her dad with all of that. And there's this really large cast of characters because all of the characters in the Infernal Devices got together with each other, and then they all had a bunch of kids. So all of the characters have their own backstories and things going on. But the main plot of the first book is that there haven't been like a lot of demons in London since the events of the Victorian London books. But then one day there's this giant demon attack that takes place during the middle of the day, which is like unheard of because demons can't come out in sunlight. And there's a demon plague spreading throughout London, and the city has to go under quarantine. And Chain of Gold came out in March 2020. March 2020. Could you imagine writing a book about a plague and having to go under quarantine and having it come out early March 2020? Cassandra Clare, are you a f***ing prophet? You know, like Greek mythology, Cassandra. Wait, like I said, there's a whole bunch of characters in this book. They're all childhood friends and super close because their parents are all super close. And it's really cute seeing them all interact. Like people call their friend group the Merry Thieves after the Merry Men in Robin Hood. And it's just like really cute. And also Cassandra Clare's books have just like gotten progressively gayer as the years have gone on. And so this is by far her gayest cast, even though it takes place in the Edwardian era. And so everyone's just like in love with everyone, and it's great. There's not a love triangle. There is a freaking love web. It is so messy and it's genuinely amazing. I love it. It's so messy. But yes, the main draw of this trilogy is just seeing this really cute close group of friends working together, causing problems, of course, and also trying to save the world from like the evil guy or whatever. And every once in a while, you'll see the gang from the Victorian London books show up, and they're adults, and it's really cute to see them like happy for once. Because reminder, they're all miserable in the Victorian London books. On a side note, I would die for Matthew Fairchild. Thank you. All right. So that was the Edwardian London books. Last but not least is The Wicked Powers. I don't have covers to show. These books haven't come out yet. This will be the final trilogy in the Shadowhunter series, and I will cry like a bitch when the last book comes out. I apologize in advance for the person that I will become when The Wicked Powers comes out. For as long as I've been reading YA books, there's been new Shadowhunter books coming out. Like, I don't know what I'm gonna do with myself. So you can kind of think of this trilogy as like a part 2 to the Los Angeles books. It's still gonna follow the Blackthorn family, which is featured in the Los Angeles books, but this time it's gonna be the younger Blackthorn siblings, specifically Drew and Ty, and it's gonna take place about 3 years after the events of the Los Angeles books, so you can kind of think of it as like a part 2. I remember when she announced the titles of the books, and she was like, the last book is going to be called The Last Shadowhunter, and everyone lost their mind. Cassandra, what are you planning? But yes, that's about as much as I can tell you without spoiling things. But it's going to take place last chronologically, and it's going to be published last. So you should read this one last no matter what, especially since you can't read it at all anyways. The first book, The Last King of Fairy, is going to be out in 2026. So you got plenty of time to read all the other Shadowhunter books first. Okay, so what order should you read the Shadowhunter Chronicles in? The most popular order, and also the order that the author recommends, is publication order. Wow, shocker. That's also the order that I introduced the books to you in. All right, so I'm going to put up on the screen the order that you should read them in, so then that way you can screenshot it and it will be easy. I'll also put the order in the description, so then that way you can reference it really easy. But I'm going to put it up with the little covers on the screen if you're a visual person. All right, so first you're going to read the first half of the New York books. Then you're going to read the Victorian London books, then the second half of the New York books, then the Los Angeles books that take place right after the New York books. Then you're going to jump all the way back to the Edwardian London books. You're probably like, why can't I just read the Edwardian London books right after I read the Victorian London books? Because they go together. And that's because it spoils you for the Los Angeles books. So you have to read it in this order. So, yes, this would be the order. And this order is really the best, but only if you're ready to commit. Because the first three of the New York books are like kind of rough. It's like the author's first books, and like you can really tell. And there's also the whole sibling shaped elephant in the room that makes parts of the trilogy admittedly a very hard read. So, would I recommend starting off with the Mortal Instruments? Yes, if you don't care about those things and you're willing to put up with a little bit of bad writing and a little bit of incest before you get to the good non stuff. Because otherwise, I don't want you to read City of Bones and City of Ashes and you're like, God, this series sucks. And then, like, you don't bother reading any of the other books because, like, they do get pretty good. So, like, even though The Mortal Instruments is like the perfect introduction to the world because it introduces all the lore to you and you get a good balance of all the downworlders, you gotta commit. You gotta be willing to commit. So if you're like, oh my God, Bree, I don't know if I'm ready to commit to the bit, because like you haven't watched Game of Thrones or Vampire Night, or you didn't grow up in a household where your mom read V.C. Andrews and like told you the plot of Flowers in the Attic, then maybe don't start off with the Mortal Instruments and instead do my recommended reading order, aka Bree's reading order for bitches who aren't ready to commit to the bit because they're cowards. This is the order I had my friends read it in, which is to start with the Infernal Devices, aka the Victorian London books. It's the second trilogy Cassandra Clare wrote, and the main characters from the human world, so the author still explains all of the lore to you, so you won't get confused reading it first. And it's, in my humble opinion, the best written trilogy, so you'll probably get invested in the universe, and then you'll be more willing to put up with the first three of the New York books, because you'll know that the writing will get better as the books go on. Or if you read the Infernal Devices and you were like, hey, this book sucks, then you can just stop there and you won't lose anything since the Infernal Devices stands on its own as its own thing. And also, it's like you gave it your best shot. You read these books, you didn't like them, you probably won't like the other ones. Some people, though, read the Infernal Devices, didn't like it, but like the Mortal Instruments. It really just depends on the person. But if you do vibe with the Infernal Devices and want to keep reading, then next you would read the Mortal Instruments, aka the New York books. And the benefit of this reading order is then you won't have to split up the New York books. You can read all six in order. And then you'll also be able to pick up on some of the Easter eggs and references to the Infernal Devices once you get to the second half of the series, which is really fun. And then you can read the Dark Artifices, aka the LA books, which were both published next and take place next chronologically. So it's like a really smooth continuation. Then once you're done the LA books, you're all caught up with the books that take place in the modern day. And then you can finally go back to the last hours, aka the Edwardian London books, aka the books that follow the children of the Victorian London books, aka the Infernal Devices. Got it? I recommended to my friends to read the Infernal Devices first and do my recommended reading order. And they said, admittedly, though, jumping from the Infernal Devices, which is the best trilogy, to the Mortal Instruments Part 1, which is the weakest trilogy, it really was a rough transition. That's the one downside of this. Just keep that in mind. But also, said friend is a little who doesn't know how to have fun, and the Mortal Instruments are really fun if you know how to have fun. So, like, that's on him. That's his fault. The girls who get it, and he unfortunately didn't get it. Hi, I just wanted to clarify something. When I make these jokes about the sibling plotline, it's because I think that these books are ridiculous and that Cassandra Clare is ridiculous, and her books deserve to get made fun of for even having this plotline in the first place, especially when she handles the topic with all the tact and delicacy of a volcanic eruption. I don't think incest itself is funny, and I don't think that you're a coward if you don't want to read these books because of that plotline. But yes, I think Cassandra Clare is kind of f***ed up for including this, and so I will continue to make fun of her books for this reason. Thank you. So once again, I would recommend if you're going from the Infernal Devices to the Mortal Instruments, lower your expectations, go into it being like, they're not going to be good, but I'll just enjoy what I can, make fun of it a little bit, make jokes about the sibling thing. That's what I do, and that's how I cope with it. Also, admittedly, I'm probably like a little bit desensitized to it. Just make fun of it. Or if you're like me, just really commit to it and act like you don't care at all to your friends, and they'll be like, what is wrong with you? You really should stop doing this bit. Like, no one thinks it's funny, but I think it's funny, and that's all that matters. You're my sister, he said finally. My sister. So I read them publication order, but I read them like true publication order, where the Infernal Devices and Mortal Instruments were alternating releases. So that's like, if you're okay with like jumping back and forth, that's also a fun way to read them because then like she sprinkles in some hints about what's going to happen in the Infernal Devices and the Mortal Instruments. So you can kind of try to like figure it out as you're going. But that's only if you're like really ready to commit. This would be the order then. And then for the weirdos out there, there's chronological order, which I think would be fun if you're doing like a reread. Not for a first read though. It is what my little sister is reading for her first read through. And that's because originally she was just going to read the Infernal Devices, and then she was like, "Oh, but I want to see what happens to the kids." So then we were like, "Okay, then we'll just read the last hours too, because you're probably not going to read the other ones." But then she got like really invested, and she's like, "No, I want to read all of them now." So she read them in chronological order, which is the Infernal Devices, Victorian London books, the Last Hours, Edwardian London books, the Mortal Instruments, aka the New York books, and then the Dark Artifices, aka the LA books. The main problem with this order is that reading the Edwardian London books, aka the Last Hours, will spoil you for the mystery in the first book of the Dark Artifices. So if you're fine with being spoiled, then go for it, I guess. I guess it's not as terrible of a transition to go from The Last Hours to The Mortal Instruments, since I thought The Last Hours wasn't as good as The Infernal Devices. So it's like you're going from like slightly less mid to slightly more mid. I have that's my controversial opinion, is that The Last Hours aren't that great. Specifically Chain of Thorns. I think going from Chain of Thorns to City of Bones isn't the worst thing in the world. Even refreshing, dare I say, because I think Chain of Thorns is one of the weakest Shadowhunter books. Fight me on that. But it's also going from her most recent published book, which is like really gay, to like the Mortal Instruments, where there's like one closeted character. So there you go. 15 books, you're all caught up. Publication order, really publication order if you're a little bit of a freak. My recommended reading order for bitches who aren't ready to commit to the bit because they're cowards. And chronological. 15 books, you're done, you're ready to go, you're ready to wait for the Wicked Powers to come out. Super simple. Or is it? It's time for the dreaded spin-off section. So you can skip through this part if you don't care about the spin-offs and side stories, but I still think it's good to know what's out there in case you get really invested in all of the lore and the drama. So I'll tell you at what point you can read them if you want to read it in order, but then also you can read it at any point after the point I tell you, in case you want to save it for later when you need like a quick Shadowhunter fix while you're waiting for the next book to be published. All right, so there's 3 novella collections that each follow a different character. And I don't know how to explain them all without spoiling things, but I'll try my best. First one is the Bane Chronicles, following Magnus Bane's adventures throughout the centuries. This is fun if you need a quick Magnus fix, but there's not really a lot of stories in it that I find worthwhile reading. If you want to read it, you should read it after you've already read at least the first half of the Mortal Instruments and the Infernal Devices. There is one short story in this collection that I think is kind of cool, and that's called The Midnight Air. But do not read it until you have read the Infernal Devices, aka the Victorian London books. But if you do want to read it before you read the Last Hours, aka the Edwardian London books, because it follows one of the kids of a couple in the Infernal Devices, so you get a bit of backstory. The reason that this was so interesting was because it was published so early before the Last Hours was ever going to even come out, so this was like the first hint we got about what this character was going to be like, and then she ruined it. She butchered that character and changed his characterization completely. I'm sorry, this is like, I can talk about these books for hours, I swear. The next short story collection is called Tales from the Shadowhunter Academy, and this one takes place after the New York books, but before the LA books. So don't look up what it's about until after you've read the New York books, because even the description itself will majorly spoil you for the ending of the New York books. But after you finish the Mortal Instruments, I would recommend just looking up Tales from the Shadowhunter Academy and seeing if that sounds like something you'd be interested in reading, because then you could read it before you read the Dark Artifices, and you get some more story following a certain character, or you can read it at any point after that if you want a quick fix later. The final short story collection is called Ghosts of the Shadow Market. This follows a certain silent brother that we all love, Brother Zachariah, Brother Senachariah, Brother Sixpackariah. Big warning, do not read or even look up this book until after you have already finished the Infernal Devices, the Mortal Instruments, and the Dark Artifices, okay? Like, just don't. If you're gonna read it after the Dark Artifices, aka the LA books, and before the Last Hours, the Edwardian London books. It has some backstory for the characters in the Edwardian London books, and it also has some hints about what's going to happen and who's going to be like popping up as a villain in the Wicked Powers, aka the books that haven't come out yet. So I would say out of all the short story collections, this one is the most worthwhile to read. You'd appreciate it. I would recommend reading it. So I'm putting again at what point is the earliest you can read the book if you want to read it like in order. You don't have to read it at this point. You can read it at any time after. You could save it for a rainy day when you're like, I need a quick Shadowhunter fix, And they're not mandatory. It's more of like a bonus thing if you really want to know. One final thing. I know I talk a lot. I'm sorry. It's just who I am. You shouldn't have clicked on you know me at this point. Okay, there's also this one other spin-off trilogy. It's not like a main trilogy, it's a spin-off one, and it's also not solely written by Cassandra Clare. It's written with a co-author. It's called The Eldest Curses, and it's a Malik spin-off. So it follows Magnus Bane and his love interest from the New York books, Malik. If you somehow don't know about Malik, like at this point in the year of our Lord 2024, like that's on you. Like the first book, The Red Scrolls of Magic, take place after City of Glass, but before City of Fallen Angels. So you can read it at any point after City of Glass. You don't have to read it though. It's not mandatory. The second book takes place in 2010, so after the last New York book, but before the first LA book. So you can read it at any point after you finish The Mortal Instruments. So once again, you don't have to read them in that order. You can if you want to, but I would recommend just saving them for when you're like, I have nothing else to read and I want some cute Malik ship scenes. Like they don't really affect the main plot, so you don't have to read them. The third book hasn't come out yet in the trilogy because it's going to take place around the same time as the first book in the Wicked Powers. So she's not going to make it come out until after the first book in the Wicked Powers comes out, so then she doesn't spoil you guys. Alrighty, is your brain hurting yet? That's because you simply don't have the energy that's required to handle that. Now, once again, just go into the books with the right expectations. Just go into it being like, you know what? We're gonna have fun. We're gonna read this silly little YA series, and we're gonna just have a good time, okay? And then you'll have a good time. Oh, Cassandra Clare, I can't quit Cassandra Clare. Like I've tried. I've tried. Cassandra Clare is like the book equivalent of like having a toxic 10-year situationship. I love her books, but she's also hurt me in the past, and I just keep letting her do it. And it's like, I know she's no good for me, but I just can't stay away. I don't know. I don't care. I love the Shadowhunter books. Are they high literature? No. Are they classics? No. But like, if you were to ask me what is like one of the most iconic YA fantasy series, I would say the Shadowhunter Chronicles. So thank you for joining me on this journey and allowing me to info dump about my hyperfixation. I hope you found this entertaining and educational and that you learned a few things and that you're planning on reading the Shadowhunter books. If you do, let me know how it turns out. I love reading your updates about like you guys reading the books and stuff. It makes me really happy. Also, if you found this educational, the screen's gonna ask you something. See you all next time.